Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the third annual Women in Business Conference celebrating women of the last century. My name is Elizabeth Wolpert, and I am the Assistant of the Dean for Enrollment Management in the Tabor School of Business. I'm also the advisor for the Women in Business organization currently. I would like to start off the conference today by providing you all a bit of background on the Women in Business organization at Millikan University and what the future holds. In 2018, the Women in Business Student Organization was formed with a small group of driven young women and their advisor, a Tabor School of Business faculty member. After all of the founding members graduated, the group was left with 3 active members and no advisor as the previous leadership transitioned into a new career. My journey at Millikan University started in April 2020 during a pandemic when the campus was not as lively as you probably remember it. I heard about the Women in Business organization from the Tabor School of Business Dean, Najiba Benabes. After hearing about the previous opportunities this organization provided to its members, attending conferences and events, networking with amazing business people, traveling, putting on Women in Business conferences, and much more, I knew this organization needed to begin again. With 3 active members who were dedicated, excited, and ready to grow, we decided to create a plan for recruiting and getting our name out to the other Tabor majors on campus. On October 30th, 2020, the organization held a socially distanced, mask-wearing, hand-sanitizing double feature movie night on the Miller Quad, featuring Legally Blonde to show the stereotypes of women in business, and Happy Death Day to celebrate Halloween and also feature a female protagonist on a college campus. The event was meant to serve as a recruitment opportunity for women in business and a way for the Millikan community to feel a sense of normalcy again. The Women in Business organization wanted to be able to hold something on campus that could get people out of their rooms and get them excited about Millikan again, because you could tell many people were really missing that. The organization gained 20 members in fall 2020, now totaling 23 active Women in Business members. I am proud to say that the Women in Business organization is a network of dynamic, collegiate, and professional women achieving their business goals through support, inspiration, and mentoring. The specific purpose of the organization is to promote the acceptance and success of women in business. The members we have right now in this organization are great students and also wonderful women. They definitely have diverse backgrounds when it comes to being involved with different things on campus, like sports, other student organizations, and many different majors within the Tabor School of Business are represented. And I know the future is bright within the Women in Business organization. The organization has 3 goals for the upcoming year. First is to recruit within high schools. We want to use Women in Business as a reason to join the Big Blue family. Like, come check out the amazing group of women that is Women in Business. Surround yourself with the women who are passionate about business and support other women in anything they do. The second goal is to promote and get women in business involved in the Decatur community, creating partnerships with local businesses that develop lasting relationships and opportunities for our members. We know networking is key. And finally, we would like to implement volunteering within the community as a key activity each semester. We want the Women in Business organization to impact the community positively and offer assistance in any way we can. The Women in Business organization is making quick work of growing and developing into a powerhouse group whose talents will be seen across campus and within the Decatur community. I am very excited to see what these ladies will think of, learn, create, and accomplish in the coming semesters, starting with this amazing Women in Business conference they are putting on. Thank you all for joining us today to hear from our wonderful alumni members on topics such as preparing for the real world, opening a small business, climbing the corporate ladder, and overcoming adversity in the workplace. So we will go ahead and introduce our first speaker, Tiffany Hill, class of 1999. Tiffany writes, I was born and raised in Decatur and graduated from Millikan as an accounting major. I spent a semester in London my junior year, which opened my eyes to infinite possibilities in the world, and my life was forever changed. After graduation, I went to work for EY as an auditor. I moved to London in 2002, where I met my husband and have remained ever since. A few years after I arrived in London, I took a 6 month sabbatical to travel around the world and returned into a learning role. I've spent the last 16 years focused on coaching, facilitating, and delivering learning to thousands of executives across the globe. At the beginning of this year, I launched a coaching business working with women professionals who are unsure of how to take the next step and who want someone to provide them with the tools and confidence to pursue their dreams so they can thrive. In my spare time, I am cherishing time with my husband and two young daughters, planning our next adventures when the world returns to normalcy. Please welcome Tiffany Hill.
I'm honored to be here today speaking to you, the women of the future of business. In preparing for this speech, it took me back to my own college experience at Millikan and how I wish I'd been told a few things before I started my life and career in the real world. Through my background in learning, I know people tend to remember stories rather than presentations. In the spirit of that, I'd like to tell you 4 stories about my life. I realize everyone has different experiences and paths, but I hope some of this will resonate with you. My first story is about taking risks. I've always been a massive planner. My husband tells me I have plans for my plans. When I graduated from Millikan with an accounting degree in 1999, I had my life mapped out. I was getting married in 3 weeks. I was moving to Indianapolis immediately afterwards. I started my job as an auditor at Ernst & Young 2 months later. I would work hard and be at the top of my peer group and get EY to transfer me to London in 3 years. After 2 years in London, I'd return to Indianapolis as a manager and have 4 kids, 2 golden retrievers, and a Ford Expedition. Fast forward to 4 years later, I was divorced, living in London, alone, an ocean away from my family and friends. That was definitely not part of the plan. I was completely out of my comfort zone. I found myself all alone in this amazing, wonderful city, questioning who I was and where my life was going. So I buried myself in work. I made new friends. I immersed myself into the culture. I traveled, and I was really happy. When my 2-year assignment ended, I decided I didn't want to leave. So I became a permanent member of the London office. 1 year later, I took a 6-month sabbatical and traveled around the world to Australia, New Zealand, and South America. I swam with the fish in the Great Barrier Reef. I went skydiving in New Zealand. I climbed Machu Picchu in Peru. I went rafting in Iguazu Falls in Brazil. I saw and did things I'd never dreamed of, and it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. When I came back, I moved into the learning team. I realized I got bored easily, and I needed a new challenge every few years. So I pursued different learning roles and leadership positions every couple of years. Through these roles, I got to develop myself, explore new ideas, and work with amazing people across the globe. Now, I'm married to a British man, also an accountant, and have 2 young, amazing daughters. What have I learned from these experiences? I've learned that it's good to have a goal that I'm working towards, but to be open to making changes to the plan whenever the opportunity presents itself. I've learned that taking risks, being open to change, and going out of my comfort zone can make me so much happier and more fulfilled than sticking to my original plans. I've learned that I change and evolve with these experiences I face every day, and so do my hopes and dreams. When I look back at that young, naive girl who left Milliken nearly 22 years ago, I would never have dreamed I'd have the life I have now. So I encourage you to have a plan, but be willing to take risks. Take yourself out of your comfort zone and be open to changing your plan. You may be surprised who you become. My second story is about following your heart. I was a junior at Milliken. I'd always been drawn to people who were unique, in particular, people from different countries. At Milliken, nearly all of my close friends had studied abroad and spoke so highly of the experience. I had never left the US, and it hadn't occurred to me this was even an option until the November of my junior year. Something in my head clicked, and I decided I had to experience it. I remember being so nervous to tell my parents about my plans, as they had also never left the country. I took them to the Steak and Shake restaurant, a public place, so they couldn't get too upset. Unsurprisingly, they were really worried about what I was going to tell them. I'm certain they thought I was pregnant. When I told them I wanted to study abroad, I could see both relief and confusion in their eyes. I had lived in Decatur my entire life, and my high school was further away from our house than Milliken had been. Being exposed to people with new and exciting experiences at Milliken, I had begun to get curious and crave these new experiences for myself. Although this spark inside me had been growing for some time, I hadn't mentioned it to my parents until now, and it's no surprise that it came as a total shock to them. Initially, they were against the idea. At the time, as a young, overly confident, ambitious, ready to take on the world 21-year-old, it seemed unwarranted. Looking back now as a mother, I can imagine how scary it must have been to send your daughter off to another country all alone for 4 months. For the first time in my life, I really advocated for myself, and I put everything in place to make it happen. It was going to cost more than a semester at Milliken, so I organized a loan, booked an international flight, and prepared to leave my family and friends for 4 months. All things I'd never done before. When I arrived in London, completely jet-lagged and exhausted, I remember sitting in the taxi on the way to my apartment in awe of what I was seeing. Everything was different. They drove on the other side of the road and the other side of the car. The buildings were all so old, many older than our entire country. They talked in different accents. While it was still English, I could hardly understand what they were saying. I couldn't believe I was there. The 4 months was the most defining moment of my life, as it changed the course my life would take. I fell in love with the city, the culture, the people, the art, the history, everything. Although I managed to visit several countries, it wasn't enough. I had been bitten by the travel bug, and I knew I had to come back. That semester shaped the way I interviewed for a job the following year, as I was only interested in going to a firm that could send me abroad. What did I learn from this experience? I learned that above all else, I could shape my own destiny. I learned I need to follow my passions and be willing to fight for them. This has been one of the most important factors in my career. I've learned that I have to drive my career and make things happen myself. Working hard is important, but I need to be asking for that next promotion, to work on the new project, or be involved in the new opportunity. I can't just sit back and expect it to come to me, because most likely it won't. If I've learned anything in my 22 years in the real world, it is, if I don't ask for something, I won't get it. The worst response I can get is a no. and I can then move forward with no regrets. I can honestly say I have no regrets today. My third story is about perfection. One of the key themes you will have seen in common with each of these stories is I always follow my passion, perhaps without even realizing it. Staying in London, studying abroad, I believe that's been a key part of my success because I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm excited to do what I love. I've not yet discussed what I'm most passionate about, my children. Being a working mother is an entirely new level of pandemonium. One of the things I've found the hardest is the societal pressure to be perfect at everything. The perfect mom, the perfect career woman, the perfect wife, the perfect friend, and still have time for myself. It's exhausting. What I finally learned in my 40s is that we all have different family situations, different challenges, different levels of support, different issues with our children, different career aspirations, and each woman needs to find the best solution for her and her family. For my family, I worked 4 days a week, and when my children were younger, my husband also worked 4 days a week. We had them in daycare 3 days a week, and we each got to spend a day alone with them. That setup worked well for our family. It meant we both had to take our foot off the accelerator on the work side, and we were happy with that. Our children are our passion, and we wanted to follow them. As they're now both in school and require a bit less of our time, we've had a chance to think more about what we really want to do in our careers going forward. This has been a concept that has been eye-opening to me. When I was younger, I agonized over every decision as I felt they were all so important. What have I learned? I've learned that nothing is forever. If I make a decision that doesn't work out or the circumstances change, I can change my mind. Like I said in my first story, oftentimes changing your path brings new and exciting experiences. I've learned that every woman has a different set of circumstances, and I don't need to compare myself to them. I'm happy, my family is happy, and I'm comfortable with my choices. The rest is not important. My final story is about setbacks. This story is more recent and raw. 6 months ago, on September 19th, I was told that my role was no longer part of the global strategy, and I had been made redundant. I was being let go. Having been at EY for 22 years and with plans to stay the rest of my career, I was completely devastated. Not only was I blindsided, but I was angry and hurt and lost. I had only been in this particular role for 18 months, and I had been very unhappy over that time period. It had been a new role formed as part of a restructuring, and it hadn't worked out the way it had originally been planned. I knew the role wasn't working out, which is why I'd been so unhappy. But we were in the midst of a global pandemic, and I couldn't see a way out. I made good money. It worked for my family, particularly as my kids were homeschooling due to COVID, and I was comfortable. It felt easy to stay and so much harder to think about trying to find something else. Over the past 5 years, I had discovered a new passion of mine, coaching. I've had one-to-one discussions with nearly 100 senior executives to help them work through obstacles in their personal lives and professional lives and put action plans in place to help them achieve their goals. I knew that was the direction I wanted my career to go, but I'd been struggling to get the motivation to make it happen. When I was given the news about my role being made redundant, I had instant inspiration. During my 3-month notice period, I researched how to start the coaching business, reached out to various people who had started a coaching business for themselves, and put all the pieces in place. I'm so proud to say I fulfilled a dream of mine and launched a women's career coaching business 2 months ago. I now work with women professionals who are unsure of how to take the next step and who want someone to provide them with the tools and confidence to pursue their dreams so they can thrive. At the same time, I had reached out to various people in my network to see if there were any short-term roles available. I thought it would give me a bit more time to start my business while having a steady stream of income and think about what I wanted to do next. I'm now leading a project team for 1 year and really enjoying it. Looking back on that horrible day in September, I can see now it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I got out of being comfortable, but stuck, and have not only started my dream business, but also have a role for the next year that will challenge me and play to my strengths. I can see now it was not a personal decision to remove my role. It was a business decision and the right one. However, it was impossible not to take it personally. What did I learn from this? I learned that setbacks will happen, both in my personal life and in my career, and they will happen often. This was one of so many in my life. While I should mourn and feel all the feelings and emotions that come with these setbacks, I will not let them define me. I now look at setbacks as an opportunity to follow my dreams. I realized I had a blank piece of paper and I could do anything in the world that I wanted. It felt limitless, which was a stark contrast to how I had felt in the safety of my comfortable role. While these low points are awful when I'm in them, I've found I'm actually grateful for each one because they've changed me, and each time for the better. I've become a better, more empathetic human, a better boss, a better mother, a better wife, and a better friend. While I don't relish the time I'm in them, I've learned how to get through them with the knowledge that I will not only be okay, I will be better. I'd like to conclude with a quote from the English actress Helen Mirren, which summarizes my advice to you. The trick is to listen to your instinct, grab the opportunity when it presents itself, and then give it your all. You will stumble and fall. You will experience both disaster and triumph, sometimes in the same day. But it's really important to remember that, like a hangover, neither triumphs nor disasters last forever. They both pass and a new day arrives. Just try to make that new day count. Thank you all very much.
Stacy Wood says, what is the most common issue you coach women in their careers?
I would say, and I typically, I tend to focus on women professionals, so I should say that. I would say it's probably two things around confidence, which I kind of touched on, and I think around women struggle to see other women role models doing it in the way that they would want to. So it's not to say that there aren't really successful women, but it seems that a lot of the ones at the top either maybe don't have families or maybe the husband stays home or they have a full-time live-in nanny. And a lot of people that I coach, that's not the kind of life that they want for their family. They want to be involved with their children. So I think that's something that we kind of talk a lot about is what will work for your family and what's the right answer for you.
Absolutely. Jordan says, if someone is struggling to find what they are passionate about, how would you suggest they discover what they are passionate about?
I would say it's just trying lots of different things. So, when I started off, I went into accounting not really knowing what I wanted to do. It was my dad was an accountant and he had just kind of said, well, you get into that and you can kind of do different things. And that sort of progressed to a few years later. I decided, oh, well, I had facilitated a bit of learning and I enjoyed that. So I'll go into the learning team. And then I kind of moved to different roles within there. And it was really once I had my second daughter that I just kind of thought, is this what it's going to be forever? I'm not sure this is what I want. And that's when I kind of discovered the coaching. So I think, I don't think you can know what you're passionate. Well, I certainly didn't know what I was passionate about, in college. I think you've not been out in the real world yet to even see what's out there. So I think it's just trying new things and being open to change when the opportunity presents itself.
Cantina has a question within a question here. She says, which of all of the positions that you have held have fulfilled you the most? And what was the one that paid you the most?
In money, paid me the most in money. I'm just trying to think about the one that fulfilled me the most. I would say I've not had a full-time coaching role, but what I've been doing in addition to kind of my actual role is coaching on the side. And I think that's what fulfills me the most is just, I had 2 coaching sessions today with people and just, one of them, we kind of decided they're going to leave their employer and the other one's going for a promotion. So I think to kind of see that I'm actually helping those people make a difference in their life, that's really fulfilling to me. And in terms of which one I got paid the most, because I've been at the same organization the whole time, they've kind of, as I go on, I just get paid more each year. So it's kind of, I wouldn't say that the pay is really changed. It's kind of changed with the promotions and the experience, I would say. And that's for me.
So I think Elizabeth said it the wrong way. What I meant was, in all the jobs, it's okay. In all the jobs that you held, was the one that you were paid for the most worth it? Like, was it the one that fulfilled you the most? That's what I meant. And
Okay.
well, the other question was, is going after a high paying job really worth it? Is it worth your time, or should you just go with what you feel and regardless of how much you are going to earn?
I think to answer your first question, that's an interesting one that I've kind of been grappling with, I guess, over the last 6 months, because I was being paid more in the role I was doing. My role, I mentioned that I was comfortable and secure, but I wasn't happy. So I think that's a good example of, I was getting paid the most I'd ever been getting paid, but I wasn't happy. So for me, it wasn't worth it. And I guess when you ask, should you go for a high paid role versus something that makes you happy? I mean, it's really difficult to say because I think different things make different people happy, and I don't know what makes you happy. For some people, it is making the most amount of money, and if that's the case, then that's what you should go for. But for me, it's about making a difference and feel like I'm contributing, and so I'm willing to take less money to feel more fulfilled. It makes me happier, and that's more important to me. And also bearing in mind, I'm 44, so I'm at a place in my life where I can do that. And everyone has different situations, so not necessarily everyone can do that at every stage in their life.
Was that more on the track that you were thinking, Cantina? Sorry about that. All right. Does anybody else have any questions while we're continuing this?
Yeah, I have a question.
Definitely.
I just wanted to ask, I know you said that like taking on this career was your passion, but how did you like mentally prepare yourself for it?
For the change in role that I've just had, do you mean?
Yeah, so basically transitioning from the job you had into the coaching position and like having your own business.
I mean, I think I was kind of forced into it. So it wasn't necessarily, I don't want to say it wasn't a choice because I did make that choice, but it wasn't necessarily, I had a lot of other things going on, I guess, dealing with all of the kind of loss going on with the kind of losing the job and things. But I think as time went on and as I started focusing on this thing that I've been wanting to do for a long time, it was kind of something I was thinking I would do in retirement, and it got accelerated probably 10 years. And I almost didn't have to mentally prepare myself. I just it's not work when you enjoy it. It was so fun just setting up a website, and I was able to write about different things and do things that I love. So I didn't need to mentally prepare myself because it was doing something that I love doing.
Don't we all strive for that, right? Finding something that we wake up and we don't have any doubt about going into work that day. You want to find something that you really enjoy, and the people that are around you really enjoy. So I love hearing that. It looks like I have another anonymous question here. It says, I have trouble making decisions. How do I know what is right for me?
I think that probably kind of goes back a bit to what I was saying, maybe a little in the keynote, that I also, when I was younger, used to agonize over every decision. And I think I realize now that, yeah, you need to think about decisions and obviously try to make the best decision you can with the facts you have in front of you at the time. But if it doesn't work out, I mean, things happen that you can't foresee. No one would have foreseen COVID a year ago. Things happen and you can change your mind. So if you make a decision and it ends up being the wrong one, you can change it. You can do something else.
Any other questions we have going?
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to thank Tiffany for your talk. I actually relate to so many of those stories with the study abroad, and I went to Italy and I did not meet an Italian man and stay there and marry him, unfortunately. But I just think there were a lot of relatable things in there, and I think it was great. And my internet just froze.
Well, we can still see you.
Okay, good.
You. Thank you for saying that.
I have a question. How do you push yourself to get out of your comfort zone?
How do you push yourself to get out of your comfort zone? I mean, I think it's scary. I think when you feel scared to do something and you kind of don't want to do something. And I think it's just forcing yourself to do that. And maybe, you can't do it all the time or you'd constantly be out of your comfort zone. But I think it's maybe choosing something that you love or something that, you think you want to go there and it's scary and it does put you out of your comfort zone. But it could be worth it in the end.
So uncomfortable it leads to success. Is that what I'm hearing?
I mean, it can do. It can.
Definitely. Does anybody else have any questions?
I think there's a few questions in the chat. I've not been able to answer them all or read them all.
Yeah. It looks like Kendall Trump says, what are some red flags that indicate you are in a position that is not right for you?
I think it's just whether you're happy, to be honest. I mean, I guess the example I've given to you is I knew I wasn't happy for the last year and a half, but I wasn't sure what to do about it. And I didn't have the energy to do anything about it until it was sort of forced. So I think, you know when you're happy. I think when it's the right thing. So that's what I would say. I think it's just when you're happy.
It looks like we have another question from Bella. Considering all of the people you've met in your field, what personal attributes are essential for success?
I think I would say the attributes, in my opinion, that are the most essential are EQ and self-awareness. I mean, I can't tell you how important I think those are and how few people actually have them. And I think that's something that it grows a bit with time. I'm not sure, well, I didn't have much self-awareness and EQ when I first started out, but I think those will be the things that will kind of make or break someone. I think that those are the things that I see of the people at the top. They have EQ and they have self-awareness.
We have a question. What is EQ?
So I think it stands for emotional quotient. So it's basically that you've got self-awareness and interpersonal skills and how you demonstrate that to other people. So it's basically being aware of how you come across to other people and the impact that you're having on other people and the way you behave, how it comes across to other people.
Absolutely. So sort of similar maybe to emotional intelligence or something.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. It looks like Jordan says, does school prepare you for the real world?
I think to a point. I think professionally, it kind of gives you the theoretical knowledge. I think though, for me, then I had to go learn how to put that into practice. And I learned that in my job, how to do that. And I think in terms of being in the real world, I mean, I think life's so unpredictable and it's difficult to say. I'm sure some of you have had enormous challenges already in your lives, and some of you probably haven't had any challenges yet. So I think, you know, it's, I think, you know, going into the real world, you're going to change so much, you're going to evolve so much. And I'm not sure if anything can prepare you for kind of what's to come and how you're going to change.
All right. It looks like we're finished with the questions in the chat. Does anybody else have any questions? I'll maybe ask one. What is the hardest thing that you have had to face after graduating from Millikan?
The hardest thing I've had to face. I think the hardest thing that I've ever had to face was when my daughter was born. So we had, it had taken a long time for me to get pregnant, and I was pregnant with twins. And unfortunately, they came 15 weeks early, and it was a boy and a girl, and our son unfortunately didn't survive. And our daughter Ella was only 1.5 pounds when she was born, and she was in the hospital for 19 weeks. We didn't know, you know, if she was going to live, or if she did, when she would come home, or what that would look like, what, you know, deficits she might have. So I think that, I mean, fortunately, she came home. She's perfect. She's wonderful. She's amazing. She doesn't have any kind of adverse effects from being born so early. But I think that lack of control and just having no idea what was going to happen, and kind of going through that every day was the lowest kind of point of my life. But in saying that, that year was the hardest of my life. I also wouldn't change it at all. It completely changed me as a person and made me the person I am today. And yeah, I think it's the most difficult things that we go through are the things that shape us and make us who we are. So like I say, I wouldn't change it.
Wow, what an amazing story. That's amazing. I have another anonymous question here. Tell us about the best opportunities. Tell us about internship opportunities and why they are important.
I think I had a couple of internships when I was at Millikan. And I think they just kind of give you a bit of an idea of what it's going to be like in the real world. They give you a bit of an idea of what types of roles you might be doing, maybe going and looking at different types of industries as well, what you might be interested in, what types of people you might be working with. They give you the opportunity, I think, to test out an organization and see if that's where you potentially want to be. And maybe even just kind of start to learn so that you can hit the ground running when you do start in your actual job after you graduate.
Absolutely. Let's see. We have another question in the chat from Anna Logan. How do you encourage someone who believes or has been told that they can't succeed because of their age?
I mean, I would say, you know, I'm starting a whole new endeavor at 44. So I just think, you know, it's never too late. I mean, you hear of so many different people, you know, going back to school at a certain age, choosing different careers. I think, and I think the way things are today as well, people are constantly moving. It's when I first started out, I think it was kind of jobs for life. You would go somewhere and that's where you'd stay for a number of years. And I think today people, I mean, it's very uncommon, young people, to stay anywhere longer than 2 or 3 years, and also to just change careers. So I think I would say I disagree with that, and that you can do anything you put your mind to.
I love the support. I love that. Let's see. We have a prepared question here. What is the best career advice you've ever received?
Yeah, I think that was one of the questions you sent me before, and I really thought about that. I'm not sure if it's so much career advice or life advice, but I think just don't sweat the small stuff is probably the best advice.
And it's so hard not to do that sometimes.
It is. It's still hard for me not to do that.
Yes. One of the questions I have is, when interviewing, what are the top 3 things that you should be prepared for as you're interviewing?
I would say it's interesting because I haven't had to interview for so long because I've been at the same place for so long. But I would say when we're interviewing people, it's a lot of experiential questions. So tell me about a time when you've done X. And be prepared to kind of talk about, you know, if something hasn't gone so well and how you can kind of spin that into a positive. So I think, you know, everyone expects you to make mistakes or not be perfect at everything, but I think it goes back to that self-awareness piece. And what are you doing to kind of try and work on that?
Absolutely. Ladies, any questions we have for Tiffany? We've got a few more minutes here.
If a college student, perhaps somebody on this call, is interested in studying abroad but is scared to take that leap, what advice would you give them?
Oh, I would say do it. I mean, like I say, that was probably one of the single most defining moments of my life. It completely changed the course of my life. So I think, and I think as well, studying abroad, you're doing it. Of course, at the time, I didn't realize this. I thought I was kind of off on my own, but you're safe. You're in a safe environment. You know, you're attached to a school. You know, they've kind of set you up with a place to live that you know will be in a safe area. So it's actually a safe way to try it out, as opposed to, you know, when you graduate, you just go do it yourself.
Absolutely. I know you obviously used Millikan as a transition to study abroad, and obviously now you're in London and you're where you were studying abroad. But besides that, how has Millikan kind of shaped your way or molded your way for the career path that you've chosen?
I think probably it's probably a lot of the friends that I had. I mean, one of them is actually on today, I think. So I think it was kind of, again, like, had I not been friends with Emily and some of my other friends, I'm not sure I would have studied abroad. I'm not sure my life would have taken the direction that it has. So I think I have them to thank for where I am today in a lot of ways.
Definitely building those relationships, networking, it's definitely key. So I love hearing that. Anybody else want to jump in with questions? We've got still a couple more minutes here.
Do your kids speak with a British accent?
Yeah, it's very cute.
That's awesome.
That's adorable. Can you describe your typical day?
My typical day. I mean, it's a little it's a little crazy at the moment. They just actually went back to school yesterday, so we've been homeschooling since the beginning of December. So I would say normally when they're in school, I actually normally get up and start work around 7, and we're all working at home at the moment. And kind of I do have to do the braiding of the hair and all of that, getting them ready, but he does all the rest. It takes him to school, and then he starts working, and then about 3 o'clock. And I guess if you're asking about a work day, I spend my whole day on calls. Pretty much the whole day is spent on calls. And that's one of the things I love, is that I talk to people today in Australia, in the US, in India, just all over. And I love that. I love that I'm talking to people, all over the world. And then I would go pick them up at 3, kind of do a bit more work, make their dinner, give them a bath, put them to bed, and then do all the chores for the next day.
Definitely sounds like everyone with the whole COVID thing going on, right? Trying to maintain your job and maintain your home life and still have the separation and things like that. So props to you for sure. We probably have time for maybe 1 to 2 more questions. If anybody would like to hop on or write in the chat.
I've actually got a question. And ladies, I apologize. I had some video technology issues, but I think your story is a unique one. Learning a little bit more about what you do, and you may have answered this, but what is one of the most, or what are some of challenging things about your job? Going from starting the day to actual, clients. What would you say is the most challenging?
Oh, I would say it's probably the politics, to be honest. I actually like my job. It's the politics and some of the people I don't necessarily always like or agree with kind of the way they behave, but that's everywhere. You're going to have politics everywhere. And I'm a very direct person, and I don't like to kind of conform. So that's one of the things that I struggle with. And I think that's one of the things I was struggling with in my previous role, and partly why I was unhappy. So I think, yeah, but again, with experience, you learn that's everywhere. You've got to deal with it, and I would say that's the toughest thing for me, though. And I think a lot of people.
It's interesting to hear. I'm an Millikan alum, but I'm in insurance, and politics too is a big thing and one of the challenges. So it's just interesting to hear that's kind of the same everywhere.
Mm-hmm. I think it's everywhere, unfortunately, big or small.
Sure, yeah.
All right, any final, it looks like we do have one final question from Pamela. It says, politics, advice on navigating them.
I mean, I think my advice would be, and this is what I try to do, is to just be true to myself. I'm not gonna go against my beliefs and do something, but I have to kind of go with what my boss, or what my boss's boss wants. So I think as long as I can stay true to myself, I'm fine with that. And I think I've kind of also learned just to stay quiet and not stay quiet. That's probably the wrong way of saying it. I think it's pick my battles, I would say. So I don't need to chime in on every little thing that happens. I think it's choosing when I need to stand up and say, I don't agree with this, and when it's okay to let it go.
All right, ladies. Thank you so much, Tiffany. It looks like we are at time. It was so great having you on the call today. And yes, thank you for sharing your story and your tips on how to prepare these ladies for the next step in their career or jumping into a career from college. We really appreciate it. What's going to happen now is we have a few fun questions that will pop up as a poll. Feel free to participate if you would like. These questions are going to range from history about Millikan, questions about the Tabor School of Business, history of women within the last century, and also just proper business practices. So you can feel free to participate in those. And we're going to put on some music, as I think Pam mentioned that at the very beginning. She says she feels like we need Jeopardy music on a timer prior to starting. So I'm going to throw on just a little bit of background music. We'll have about, it looks like about 10 minutes or so until we introduce our next speaker. And that will be Gretchen Murphy, and she will be speaking on the journey of opening a small business. So I will go ahead and shoot one of the polls out, and we'll give you guys a few minutes to answer those questions.